welcome to another episode of Sew Addicts. It's so good to have you here today. I'm so excited about what we're making, as you can always tell. Today we're making a matching two-piece set. So I noticed over the summer a big trend was actually the matching two-piece, whether it's a top and pants, top and skirt. It was kind of like a matching two-piece summer outfit trend, I guess. Anyway, so I took it upon myself to kind of DIY this look for you guys. Again, I know we're like towards the end of summer, but I was hoping for some of us that actually live in extended warmer climates, more than 3 months, you can actually wear this look. And I believe you can probably even style it into the fall, but fingers crossed. Anyway, I'm super excited about this look. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me on Sew Addicts today. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see more awesome videos from me. And let's get started. To get started, we would need 1.5 yards of a little bit of a sheer fabric. So you can get any lightweight fabric for this. Then you need a matching color, also 1.5 yards, and a sheer chiffon fabric. Then we need 2 lengths of zippers, so you can get one between 7 to 9 inches and another one between 12 to 14 inches. We also need bias tape on double fold. And last but not the least, we also need our thread to sew everything up. So getting started, we are going to outline our front piece. So I drew a straight line across my fabric as a baseline to get started. Now we're going to measure 6 inches down. This is how wide my bodice or front pattern is going to be. You could always make yours a little longer. You just want to make sure that it's actually long enough to cover your bust. So now I have my 6-inch line going across. Now we're going to identify 3 measurements. You want to get your measurement over the bust, around the bust, and under the bust. So my over the bust measurement is 30 inches, around the bust is 32, and under the bust is about 30 inches as well. So we're going to take the 30-inch measurement and divide that by 4. That should give us about 7.5, and I'm just going to round it off to 8 inches. So at the corner of our fabric, we're going to draw a 1/2-inch seam allowance. Then we're going to take our 8-inch measurement and divide that in 2. So that should be 4 inches. So I'm marking those 4 inches. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to create princess seams in our bodice. So we're splitting our bodice basically in 4 places. Now we're going to make room for our bust. To do this, you want to take your around bust measurement and your over the bust measurement and find the difference. So as you can see, mine is 2 inches. So I want to make sure to make up these 2 inches around my bust. Then we're going to divide these 2 inches in 4 because, again, we are separating our pattern in 4 places. So 2 divided by 4 is a 1/2 inch. So I'm coming out in the middle of my pattern here, a 1/2 inch, and going in a 1/2 inch at the bottom and just squaring it off at the top. So then we're going to repeat the same thing for the other side of our pattern. As you guys can see, I'm just drawing a nice straight line. I'm drawing out 4 inches for the top and the bottom and making sure to connect those 2 points just like we started. And then we're going to make room for our bust again. So I'm coming in at the bottom of my pattern, a 1/2 inch, coming out in the middle, another 1/2 inch, and just squaring that off and taking it off to the point at the top, as you guys can see. So now we have a nice curved edge, and we're also making room for our bust. So after you have these 2 measurements and markings, then we're just going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance around our pattern. After seam allowances, then we're going to cut out our pattern. You also want to make sure to open up that front fold. After cutting out the pattern, it should look something like this. Now we're going to go on this section of the pattern and actually lower it by 1 inch. This is going to allow your pattern to lay nicely under your armpits. So I'm just lowering it down, as you guys can see, 1 inch, and we just want to make sure to cut that section off. Now moving on to our back pattern, I'm just drawing a line on my fabric again just to get a baseline to get started. And now I'm measuring out 8 inches, just like before for our front. A total of 8 inches for the back, but instead of the 6 inches, I'm going to be measuring 1 inch less of your total measurements, which is 5 inches, because we did take out that 1 inch from our front side pattern. So now I have my 5-inch line and my 8-inch line creating a nice rectangle, but at the edge right here, at the end of our back, we are going to be coming in another 1/2 inch. This is going to give us a nice tailored shaped back. So after we come in that 1/2 inch, we're just going to go ahead and add seam allowance all across our pattern, as you guys can see, and then we're going to cut it right out. Moving on to our chiffon piece, this is the fabric we're going to use to cut out the circle pattern on our front piece. So to draft out the circle pattern, we're going to take the over bust measurement, and you want to times that by 1/6. So my 30 inches, we're going to take that and times that by 1/6. That should be 5 inches. I marked out the 5 inches here on this line, and I just pinned my tape measure at the edge of my fabric so I can get a nice 5-inch curve going across from one edge to the other, as you guys can see. So leaving your pin in, we're going to measure how long we want our front piece to be. So I made mine about 10 inches long, as you guys can see. I'm just measuring that 14-inch across, leaving that pin in so we have a nice circle going. So once you identify those points, you just want to connect all your points, add your seam allowance, and cut out your front pattern. You also want to make sure to cut out this pattern piece twice. Now moving on to drafting our bottoms. So for the bottoms, again, I have my main fabric folded in half, as you guys can see. Now we're going to grab our favorite pair of jeans. So you want to grab your favorite pair of jeans, and we're going to use this to actually outline the shape of our pants. So as you guys can see, my pair of jeans are actually kind of high-waisted. That's why I chose them. So you can try to get a high-waisted pant or something, and you just want to trace that outline of the actual pant. You do not want to trace the waistband. So we're just tracing the actual outline of the pant. So as you guys can see, I have my markings going here. It is a little faint just because my fabric is really light, but I do have the markings here. So now by our crotch area, as you can see, I'm going to be adding about 2 to 3 inches. So you want this to be a little loose and not too fitted. So from your basic outline, you want to add about 2 to 3 inches and just connect it to your waistline, as you guys can see, like I've done here. So now we're going to measure how long we want our pants to be. So mine is about 16 inches. So you can measure 16 inches from the top, and just make sure to connect that at the leg point going here, and also at the extended leg point going here. So I'm just making sure to extend my seam right here, because I did extend that 2 to 3 inches. So make sure to extend that line all the way down, and you just want to make sure to square that off, creating a nice hemline. So now we've outlined our front pattern. For this edge, since we did come out here about 2 to 3 inches, we are just going to come out on this side of our leg just about 1 inch or 1.5 inches, depending on if you want yours a little wider or not. So we're just coming out here a little bit and coming out here about 2 to 3 inches, creating this pattern. So after this, you want to make sure to add your 1/2 inch seam allowance all around your pattern, and then cut it out. The back process is relatively the same. You want to put your pattern again on the back side. As you guys can see, I have it pinned to my main fabric, and now I'm just outlining the back just like we did for the front. You want to make sure to trace those lines and have those curves as well. And then you also want to make sure to add the 2 to 3 inches to the side like we did for the front, and also the 1 inch at the bottom of your pant leg. Make sure to trace all your lines, add your seam allowances, and also cut out your pattern piece. Now, when it comes to the chiffon, you basically want to trace your main fabric pattern on the chiffon pattern. The only thing you want to do is extend the bottom about 3 inches and extend the side about 2 to 3 inches, or however big you want it. You can make it as big as you want, but that's what you want to make sure to do for the chiffon pieces for your front and back. So now we have our front pieces. As you guys can see, this was cut out on faux twice. We have those as well on faux twice. So you want to have 4 pieces for your front and 2 for your back, and also 2 of the circle pieces. So now we're going to start sewing everything up. So I have my 2 front pieces here, as you guys can see. So now we're just going to sew these right sides connecting to right sides, making sure we're sewing a center front and also the princess seams that we created. So we want to sew it just like this at a 1/2 inch on our sewing machine. So after sewing it up, you want to make sure to also sew the lining piece as well. So I also cut open these seam allowances just so that bust point could lay better when you press it out and it's not puckering too much. So now we have our two front pieces, and then we're going to attach our back. So the back is relatively easy. You just want to make sure that we do have the side that's tapered to the bottom, and then we're going to attach our front and back together. So you also want to attach one side all the way from top to bottom, and the other side should create an opening for our zipper. So the other side, you're only really going to be sewing about 1 inch up and creating an opening for the zipper, just like this. So we do have an opening here for the zipper. So make sure to repeat the same thing for the lining as well. Moving on to the chiffon pieces for the bottom. So we're going to attach these two circle pieces together. So again, just like we did for the bodice, you want to attach at a French seam. By the way, we're going to be doing a French seam for this. So you want to sew from top to bottom here, and then leaving an opening here for our zipper, just the same size as our bodice piece. So now again, we're just French seaming our top to bottom, right sides to right sides, and then trimming that excess fabric, folding it over as you guys can see, and just sewing it down. That's a nice French seam. So you want to make sure to do this for your chiffon pieces. So creating the French seam, as you guys can see, we have it all sewn up on one side, and then we have about 4 to 5 inches opening, just as long as the bodice opening as well for our chiffon piece, and then the rest of the seam is French seamed. So now we're going to attach the chiffon piece and the main fabric together. So you just want to grab these two at the edge right here and then pin across the edges of your main fabric. So this should easily fit because they're both the same sizes. So you just want to sew all around the edge of your main fabric and the chiffon pieces together. So I sewed it on the sewing machine. As you guys can see, everything is laying nice and neat, and we also have the opening for a zipper. So now we're gonna install a zipper. So I do have a full tutorial on my channel showing you how to properly install an invisible zipper, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna run through this a little quickly. So I'm just pinning in my zipper now in that opening, as you guys can see, and you just wanna make sure to sew that down on the sewing machine. So after sewing it down, it should look something like this. As you guys can see, just a nice little opening for you to actually put the bodice on. So the zipper is really long, so I'm just gonna go ahead and actually just cut that down. And then you just wanna make sure to top stitch that on the sewing machine, basically on top of the fabric or on top of the zipper itself, so it doesn't move and you have a nice clean zipper. So moving on to the lining process of our main fabric, we have our lining here, but then we're also going to cut out two 15 to 20 inch straps. So as you guys can see, I do have my two straps here, but before we put in the straps, we're actually going to line the main fabric. So you want to put your lining right sides of the fabrics to right side of the main fabric. Again, points to points, making sure that the zipper side, as you guys can see, you're pinning those really nice and close. All your princess seams are matching, your center front is matching, all around that edge all the way to the back. Now before we do sew this on the sewing machine, now we're going to insert our straps. So after pinning this, as you guys can see, I'm just going to flip that over so you guys can have a better visual. Now we're going to insert those straps in the front of our bodice. So as you can see, I just opened that up and I'm going to insert the straps in front of our bodice on the princess seam. So now that I have that pinned, now we're going to sew that at a 1/2 inch on the sewing machine. So after sewing it down, your bodice should be looking something like this. At this point, I do encourage you to try yours on so you can kind of identify how long you want your straps to be. So after trying mine on, I was able to mark the points. So now we're going to actually insert the straps at our back. So I'm just putting mine, as you can see, right in between my center front and my side seams, and I'm opening that middle. I know we close it off, but I'm just opening it a little bit with a seam ripper, and I'm just gonna pull that between my main fabric and my lining, and we're just gonna run this over the sewing machine again. So again, you want to try it on, make sure you have the right strap length, and we're just going to open a nice small hole there and close up the strap. So make sure to do that for both sides, as you guys can see. At this point, you can also sew down or edge stitch your lining so the lining lays flat inside. As you can see, I did go around and actually edge stitch that lining. After that, then we're going to close up the bottom of our bodice. So to close up the bottom of our bodice, we are going to go through the opening by our zipper. So we're going to use this opening by our zipper and actually flip our main fabric and our lining pieces over. So we're flipping that over, making sure right sides of our fabrics are together. So as you guys can see, I flipped that over and I'm just pinning right sides and the right sides together. So we're going to sew this down on the sewing machine at a 1/2 inch. So you want to make sure, again, I'm just grabbing my fabric and I'm just making sure to actually pin these fabrics together so we can sew it nicely on our sewing machine at a 1/2 inch. So once that's sewn down, your bodice should be nice and closed off like this. Also make sure to keep pressing along the way. The next step is to finish up the opening by our zipper. Now this again should already somewhat be folded for you, just like this. So now I'm just pinning that down. You can kind of just hand stitch this if you like, or you can just closely sew that and top stitch that on the sewing machine. After sewing that down, now we're gonna go ahead and finish up the edges of our chiffon piece. So there are 3 ways you can finish this up. You can grab a pinking shears and just trim the edges, creating a nice scalloped edge, or you can actually grab your serger and serge the edge like this. Or the third method is actually folding the edge just like this and top stitching this down. Now this is probably going to be the hardest method, but it gives you 3 options and 3 ways that you can finish the edges. Now we're going to get started with sewing our bottom. So I do have my 2 front pieces laid out here, 2 main fabric and 2 chiffon pieces. So now we're going to actually attach these 2 pieces together. So we're just going to edge stitch across here for the 2 front pieces. And we're also going to do the same thing for our back as well. So you want to edge stitch across there for your back pieces as well. So as you can see, I'm just going ahead and actually just edge stitching my chiffon piece and my main fabric together. So the front fabrics have been attached, and now we're actually going to be sewing down our front pieces together. So you just want to sew down the curve. So we're only sewing down this front curve, as you guys can see. So you want to make sure to repeat the same process for the back, but for the back we're actually going to be leaving about a 10 to 11 inch opening for our zipper. So after sewing this down, it should look something like this, like I said, for the back, and then we're just going to go ahead and actually attach our zipper. So after attaching our zipper for the back, it should look something like this. As you guys can see, the zipper is again a little too long, so you can just go ahead and actually cut that down and make sure to just top stitch that on the sewing machine so it doesn't move. So after attaching that, now we're going to attach our side seams of our pants. So the side seams of the chiffon are going to be attached separately from the side seams of the actual main fabric. And do not forget, you want to French seam the chiffon. So again, right sides to right sides for the chiffon, turn it over and then sew it down, and then right sides to right sides for the main fabric. So I've attached all this at the side seams, as you guys can see, French seam for the chiffon separate, and then attaching the side seams for the main fabric. So once you have this all sewn up, now we're going to finish the bottom of the main fabric. So the bottom of the main fabric, we're just going to actually top stitch that by folding over twice. So you just want to fold over twice and top stitch that on the sewing machine all around. So after top stitching it, it should look something like this all finished up. Once you finish that, now we're actually going to connect our crotch together. So again, I'm just flipping that over, making the wrong side to the right side, and we're just attaching this at the crotch area, and we're going to sew it from one edge to the other, just like this. So you also want to make sure that your inner main fabrics are also matching at those points and everything is marching up nicely. So after sewing it down, it should look something like this. So for the next points, we're going to go into our waistband. For our waistband, you want to measure your total waist measurement and add a total of 2 inches and make it 4 inches wide. Then you also want to make sure to cut out the same pattern piece in an interfacing fabric and glue this together. So now we're going to sew down the sides of our waistband. So for one side of the waistband, you want to make sure to come in 1 inch and also sew down the sides. So we're sewing down the sides and coming in another inch. For the other side, we're just going to be sewing down the sides and not coming in an inch. So once you have this, you can trim the corners and then you want to flip the fabric to the right side. So after this, now we're going to walk our waistband around our waist. So I'm just opening up my zipper, as you guys can see, and now I'm going to start from one edge and start pinning my waistband to my waist. So as you guys can see, I'm just starting and making sure that the edge of my waistband is touching the edge of my actual waist fabric, and I'm walking this all around my waist. Now when you get to the other side of the waistband, the side that actually has the flap we created, we're going to snip right at the corner over there. So this allows us to give that extra seam allowance some space and some ease so we can easily sew that down. So again, you just want to snip in the corner over there so you can get that seam allowance and you can sew it down in the sewing machine at a 1/2 inch. So I'm just going ahead and actually sewing this down. You want to make sure to lay it nice and flat and sew it from one edge to another. As you guys can see, when we do get to this edge, all we have to do is just fold that over nicely. It creates a nice flap, and of course the other edge as well. It also creates a nice covering for all the extra seam allowance and excess thread that we have there. So I went ahead and pressed this down as well with the iron. As you guys can see, I have my seam allowance also folded in. So you can just top stitch this, blind stitch this, or edge stitch this on the sewing machine. So when it comes to the closure for our waistband, you can also use a button or a hook and eye. And then finishing up the bottoms, again, you can use one of the 3 methods. So after successfully completing this, you should have a beautiful 2-piece matching set. That is the end of this tutorial. I'm so glad you guys stuck with me. I know it was a long one, but I was so glad with this look. As you can tell, and it's nice, breezy, and just a fun look. I was really excited to make this, even though it did take me some time, but I was really excited to be done. And I'm sure you would too if you do make this. So if you have any photos or anything you want to share with me, make sure to tag me on my Instagram account at DamiAdenikeX. If you like this video, please give this video a big thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, or you just want to say hi, scroll down and definitely leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed already, scroll down there and hit the red subscribe button so you can see more awesome videos from me. And I hope to catch you guys here again next week.